Birds, as you're coming through the door, they go absolutely mental. The noise level shoots through the roof because they just know they're in for a fun afternoon. We have about, I don't know, 10 or 15 plants of them growing in the drive. They get a regular hacking to 6 foot every now and again. Dad's always out there chopping bits off. But they love it. The plants were a couple of quid each when we first got them. Was 2 foot high. Cheap. Once you've got one, you've got it forever. Also, if you keep them stooled at kind of 5-6 foot, the root systems don't go mental, so they won't undermine your house and all this kind of stuff you hear about. They only have the root for what foliage they're going to have on top. So we give them a lot of that. Rosemary, fennel, any kind of herbs that Mum's got in the garden when she's cutting stuff down, she'll wash that and stick it on the floor. Again, it's just something for them to do. It keeps them entertained. Again, we put it in wet and they just laugh on it and whatnot. Swings, cable ties, all this kind of stuff. Again, it's about keeping the birds, especially kind of 2-year-old, 3-year-old hens. They're just lazy. They just want to sit there, do nothing all day. So throwing things in, bits of food on the floor, branches up high where they've got to get to them, millet sprays, hanging that kind of stuff. It just gets them a bit more active, keeps them healthier. If they're healthier, they're going to breed better, hopefully. So we're kind of, 8 years, it's 8 years ago now. So again, the birds have moved forwards, pushed forwards a bit. Cinnamons. Spangle, probably at this time is probably my favourite bird we've bred to date. Spangled cock, the problem is with him, you can't really show him because he doesn't have, his spots are there, but they're not visually there enough to actually do well on the show bench. Super bird though, lovely face, nice dropped directional feather, nice kind of fun face. As well as once we bred him, we thought that's the face we need on the rest of the stud. We also, I guess, in recent years changed our view of what we wanted to see in our birds. For a while, we wanted to see all the birds looking the same, and we thought if we have a stud where every bird looks the same, we've cracked it. But the problem is, once you get a stud that every bird looks the same, they all breed the same. And while you're breeding those kind of birds and they all look the same, everyone else is shooting on past you. So now we want our birds of different lines or different things to look different. So some will have big heads, some will have big bodies, and a complete mixture. So when you're pairing up, you can balance everything back together again. And also we're bringing in different outcrosses with different features. You're bringing in that extra potential to change your direction of your stud really. So we try and bring in 2 or 3 outcrosses every year, if possible. Just to mix up with blood. Sometimes it's colour variety we might try and bring in. But normally we go to studs with a feature that is right through their stud that we think actually that's a really nice feature they've got and our birds need that on them. So yeah, we're quite careful where we go. It's difficult buying nice, good quality birds with the features you want, because obviously the features everyone else wants and everyone wants to keep. So it's sometimes you've got to swap good birds, part with a good bird to get a good bird, but in the end it all swings around with us. Our lacewings. So now we have our bottom row of cages, so 12 cages, we pair some form of lacewing up in them, so whether it's splits, visuals, or normals into lacewings. So we kind of save that bottom row for that. We think lacewings have obviously been Eno-ish. They're light sensitive, their eyes. So like lutinos and albinos, you see a lot of albinos and lutinos that are blind in one eye or both eyes. You just pick them out on the show bench. But unless you really look into their eyeball, you can't see it. The same thing happens with lacewings. So we keep them at the bottom where it's a bit darker, because our aviary, when the lights are on, it is really bright. More for our benefit rather than the budgies. They don't need as much light or as much heat and everything else that we give them. It's because Dad spends a lot of time out there, so it has to be comfortable. So yeah, we keep the bottom row just for that, so it's a bit darker. They prefer it down there. And again, yeah, never lacewing to, rarely lacewing to lacewing. So I said about the Mulkington and the spot and the mask, so we nicked that with the lacewings as well as the normals that we brought back on the spangles. And we're just trying to basically add everything else to that now. So with this one we had the spot and the mask. We just need to now put the head to match it. Because that looks like a big bird with a small head. So obviously the show bird, it's not ideal. More kind of stylish lacewing hen. Cinnamon cock. He won a best in show for us, someone. As a young bird. Sky blue hen. Again, I think because we've mixing all our lines that we did keep separate, we mixed them all together. So I think now you see virtually all the photos look a bit different, which is the kind of look we're going for now. Opening cinnamon blue. So as a young bird, this did really well on the show bench. Won lots of best young birds. Then it started doing this thing with its feathers. Sometimes it happens with budgies. You get the feathers just don't sit properly. Often it's here where you see it on the mask, and they kind of flick over. Don't know what that does. It's not passed on from generation to generation. It's just, I don't know whether the bird's short or something, or whether it's stressed. I don't know. But you know, every now and again you get it with a couple of birds. The grey hen. These are the kind of hens that we like breeding with. So they're not the big, massive, over-the-top birds. They're the kind of stylish birds, off all brothers and sisters, sisters to good birds. But they're not your kind of top 10 show hens. The kind of next level down. But they're the key hens. It's the mediocre hens that are the kind of key hens that are brothers and sisters, the best ones, off your best cocks. We're really strict with cocks that we keep. So we keep all the best cocks, regardless of their age, their size, variety, whatever. It's just we keep the best, and the worst go. With the hens, if we've got a super cock that's only bred one hen and it's pretty average, we'll keep that hen and pair it to a visually better cock. We find it works doing it that way around rather than doing it with the cocks. Lovely hen. This hen developed a cyst on its wing. There, so it lost a couple of end feathers and then now this horrible lump. She never bred for us, and I don't know whether it's probably is a blessing, because that might have been passed on to its young or come out later generation. Lovely hen though. It's kind of got the mask and the face that we were looking for at that time. We never showed her because she had a cyst on her wing. Cinnamons, this comes out of the flecked hide I showed you before. Normal sky blue, so hardly any opening cinnamons. So now we've got, it's all opening cinnamon, a lot of opening cinnamon hens are mixed into it, but not many opening cinnamon cocks. So this is the kind of, I think this is when the lacewing started to kind of improve, so it was the second or third generation from Mulkington, when we'd gone Mulkington to us, it's 50-50, then gone back to us, and then gone back to us in the line. That's when they got better. Then a couple of years later we added a tiny bit of kind of 50-50 Moorhouse, 50% us, and then the head feather just went a bit more fun and kind of blowy, which is what they needed. So these are brothers. At this time we used to have sand in the bottom of the cages, and that's it there. So they were often, the birds were quite dirty. The feathers, they just kept picking up the sand all the time. So we've now changed. So in our breeding cages, it's newspaper for really easy speed of cleaning. And then in the flight trolley cages, it's kind of a coarse wood chip. I forget the name of it. It's kind of
Gold
a
chip.
gold chip. Yeah, the thickest gold chip. We like that because once you put it down, it doesn't just blow around everywhere. It stays in the cages. We try and put as minimal amount in as possible because we don't like the cages when they, especially when we're paired up, full of rubbish and husks and stuff like that, because it just blows around and into the environment we're breathing in. So we try and keep the cages really as clean as possible without being OCD and doing it every day. But they are cleaned out on a regular basis, especially the perches. Perches in the flight, the trolley cages get cleaned out a lot, because if your budgies are like ours, they're constantly pecking and eating all the dirt off the perches. So if one bird in a flight has something, they all get it pretty quick. And also helps keep the feet clean if the perches are clean. These are brothers and a sister. We also now are trying to not pair blues into lacewings, because sometimes you get that horrible blue diffusing coming out in the bodies. So we're coming away from that. We're trying to put greys into them, grey greens. Never done it with Lutino, no.
That works.
Yeah. We've got, to be honest, we've only ever bred one Lutino, and that was a fluke, which we'll show you that later. But yeah, we just avoid blue for the lacewings, because you know it's heartbreaking if you breed a really good white one and it has that horrible blue cast. Same as double factor spangles. So if you don't put the blue in, you're not going to get the blue out. That's the theory. So now we're constantly knocking that blue out. So these were very young hens at the time of the photos. This has changed a little bit. So this was a few years ago. So we were using this brown stuff trophy bed in the nest boxes, which we don't do it anymore. We were finding that because we use a concave, we only needed a little bit of it, and we weren't creating the same conditions that kind of the millers were using. They put in quite a lot of it because they don't use concaves. So I think if you're not using concaves, and they watch it a lot. So I think if you're not using concaves, it's a really good product. But if you're using them, it doesn't. It dries out
It gets mates.
It gets mites. Well, but it's not the trophy bed gets mites. It's the birds are the problem, aren't it? So talking of mites, so diatoms, all our nest boxes are now identical. So they're all these Offspringer Trespa ones. For easy cleaning. Breeding is no different between them and a wooden box. It's all the same. It's just when you've got 60 of them to clean, it's easier to do this than wooden ones. So where they slide out here, so this little box comes out. So on the bottom here is so that's diatom powder and this thing called Stalason, which is a powder disinfectant. Always in the bottom of the nest boxes. Then we put in, now it's a fine gold chip, so it's not sawdust, but it's the next kind of coarser grade. So that goes in there with a teaspoon of diatoms. And we find if you do that, you never get mite in nest boxes. They can't establish, it's impossible. People do say, oh, I've seen mite walk over diatoms and walk off, but it takes time to kill. It's not like spraying them with insecticide. So it basically cuts them because it's sharp. So what you're doing, you're seeing the mite walk off, but an hour later it's killed, it's dead because it's translated to death in effect. Be careful with it though, because if you get it in the environment, it's not good to be breathing it in. So it's okay where you put it somewhere where the birds aren't kind of flapping around over it. The idea is we put it in the mixture in the nest box. So when the hen's sat there, any mites that are on her, the diatoms are going to kill that as well. So it's just something. So we've been messing around with diatoms since 2004. Since we went to South Africa, and we've never had red and white in any breeding cages or any of the nest boxes since before then. And I put it down to diatoms and another product that we use that we spray birds with. One thing we did learn, and we learned it too slowly, is when we used to buy in birds, we would just literally give them Ivermectin as they're going in the cage, on the back of the neck, drop of Ivermectin, stick them in the cage, breeding cage, whatever, on their own, quarantine type thing. Problem with that is the Ivermectin doesn't kill the mite quick enough. So if you bring in a bird covered in mite or lice, by the time the Ivermectin's taken effect, you've already infected the whole aviary. We bought in a couple of birds, I don't know, a month before breeding season, paired them up. I went home one day, I thought one of the birds was cockbird, it was just pulling its feathers out, or trying to pull its feathers out. And I thought it's either not right in the head, or there's something wrong with it, because it was a good show bird. And then we looked on it, and it was absolutely covered in lice. And this was in a cage next door to this bird we just brought in. So we caught that bird up, and that was absolutely dripping in it. So before then, we were just treating the birds with ivermectin once a year. One dot on the back of the neck, that was it. So in effect, the birds, we weren't killing the mite quick enough, and then it was just breeding for a whole year before we treated it again. So now, every time I go home, we look at the feathers, we catch 2 or 3 random birds out of each fly, pull a few feathers out of them, and then we look at them under a microscope to see if there's any lice on any of them. And that's just something we do as standard. If we do, we soak them or spray them with this, and we'll do the whole lot, spray the whole lot of the birds. We used to dunk the birds, so not the head, everything else, in kind of warm solution of this stuff. So once a year we do that, just to make sure that when we start breeding, we're completely mite-free, stress-free for the birds. We now, going back to here, we use so the ivermectin we use once a year still. We do it when we bring chicks. The same day we bring them, we give the chick a dose of that. We've stopped using the S76 in the water purely because it was a really expensive product, and when you've got a lot of budgies, one little bottle doesn't go very far. So now, I haven't got a picture of it, but we now use a sheep product, which is ivermectin, but it's soluble in water. So we give them that 2 days a week, 2 days in a trot, every 3 months, to sort out any mites, lice that are on them. Whenever I go home, which is not that often these days, say every 6 weeks, maybe longer, we fog the whole bird room with this. So 1 litre or 1.5 litres of solution, so that's 75 ml of that, does our entire bird room. So when we fog, it's got one with a hand nozzle, and we aim it into every breeding cage, all the ceilings, every bird that's out of the nest box. We don't chase birds out of nest boxes to do it, but anything that's out and on a perch, same as the flights, we just soak them all with this. 5-10 minutes before the lights go out. And that's just something that, because we had this bad experience with mite, we don't want to get it back again, so we're constantly trying to keep it away.
I've experienced this year, the first time ever I've seen it. I only got a slaughter machine as well. I was looking for something to use that. I do it once a fortnight now, religiously now. I wish I had a spot that's like, couldn't understand how I had it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I like the powder you put in an S-box as well.
Yeah, the powder is 20, you get 20 kilograms, £8 or something like that. It's next to nothing. Yeah, once that will last forever.
Like you say, when you get a starfish, it's hard to get rid of it.
Once you get in your breeding cages, it's everywhere, because what you see, it's behind them, it's got to take a lot out. Yeah.
Nah.
So I think foggers are brilliant. Obviously they're expensive, but if a club bought a fogger, everyone could use it, kind of thing, or lend it to people. But I think the thing is with Mike, you always hear people, oh, I've got Mike, and it's like, well, okay, what did you? Oh, well, I haven't met him last year, and I did that last year, and it's like, well, if you did that a little bit more often, you wouldn't have this Mike issue. So yeah, we're now we haven't